We are thrilled to have Rik McClave here with us today. And again, if you haven't seen the fire truck, please take a look. It's really neat, 1939. So if we can all have a nice round of applause for Rik.
She told me that she's got a very embarrassing picture of me and her dad of many, many years ago.
His dad.
Thank you for inviting me.
His dad or her dad?
I'm Rik McClave for those of you
It's a picture of him.
out of the area. Know me. I'm a 61-year member of the Stephentown Volunteer Fire Department. I'm a certified fire protection specialist, interior firefighter, and an EMT for the past 47 years. I am retiring at the end of this month. I held every office in the fire department and the fire district with the exception of treasurer. So, gonna go to the little bit of history of the Stephentown Volunteer Fire Department, but before I do, this is something that neither I nor any individual member of this community can do on their own. And I'd like to have all of the current and former firefighters and EMTs speak about. Just raise your hand, please. June 1916. Stephentown Board agreed to pay men, not women, men, 15 cents per hour to fight fires. There was no mention of a department. How this came about, I don't know. Some of this information we received, or I gleaned from the third volume of the Stephentown Historical Society volumes that they sold a number of years ago. So, and they still do. $5, what are they? Yeah. Well, at the end of the meeting, you can get them, $10 per, yeah. No shipping costs if you pick them up here. In 1922, the town board approved $100, which was a portion of several towns that went together to construct a fire tower on what is now known as Fire Tower Road, also Route 43 in West Stephentown. That was in place until probably 25 or 30 years ago and was manned until about 10 years prior to being dismantled. You can still access the site, which is now a radio tower for the New York State Police. The New York Department of Environmental Conservation billed Stephentown $8.94 for their share of fighting forest fires for the year 1922. And there's no other mention of how that went about. I'll come back to this in a little while. So, we're celebrating 85 years this year for Stephentown Volunteer Fire Department Incorporated. However, in 1924, September 9th, 1924, a group got together to form a fire department. There were 60 members that had volunteered at that point. Some of those people I knew in their later years. Unfortunately, I didn't glean enough information from them to add to this presentation today. 60 charter members signed up. They had a circus, a dance. They raised $535, but after expenses, they only had $284.13 left. Now, just think about that in today's dollars, and that is a lot of money from back there, considering that the fire department in 1939, which was 15 years after this, started with dues of $2 per member, which is carried through to today, $2 per year. So what they did was they dispersed the money to buy 20 soda acid fire extinguishers. And this one happens to be foam, but it's the same type of unit. You invert it, turn it upside down, and it pressurizes whatever's in. And this one is foam, but the ones that are brass are just water and soda, pressurized by a mixture of sulfuric acid. They were outlawed by regulations by the government in 1975. A lot of reasons for it, because they blew up.
And
People knocked them over, and they did things they shouldn't do. However, those 20 fire extinguishers being distributed to 20 men in the area resulted in several buildings being saved, including the Atwater barn that sits down at the bottom of Presbyterian Hill Road. Now, just think about what we have today was our large trucks. Our first trucks carried only 350 gallons. The trucks today, 2 of them carry 1,000 gallons, one carries 1,250 gallons. That's 2.5 gallons. Think about it, driving in your private vehicle, horseback or on your buggy, and going and trying to put a fire out with one of those. Just think about that. Come on. What did you do? May of 1939, a fire company versus a fire district was formed May 4th, 1939. I originally had been informed that the cause of this was the result of a fire that had happened a month before in April 1939. However, I have subsequently learned in reading the Historical Society book, Volume 3, which you can purchase for $10, that this was the result of a fire that occurred in 1938, and it was known as the what was it? It was the building that occupied the space that is now the U.S. Post Office here in Stephentown. It burned. The fire was extensive. It caused us to have Lebanon Valley, Hancock, and Naval Park come to our aid because we did not have a fire department. There is a slide you see here somewhere. Without the aid of those fire departments, with no members, bail one, and for some reason there is no history as to what happened to those 20 firefighters. When the fire was put out, eventually, they had pumped extensively from the Sheffield Pond, which sits right on Hotel Road, where the old creamery is located. If you're going from the fire station across the road toward the Kinderhook, there's a pond on the right-hand side. That's called the Sheffield Creamery Pond. Of the original 20 members, only 4 volunteered in 1939. Walter Sykes chaired the Board of Commissioners that was elected by the town, and 3 of the commissioners were part of the original 1924 60 members, excuse me. The first line there, fire company versus fire district. There are 2 ways to volunteers in the state of New York. One is called a volunteer fire company and a fire district, and the other is a protective organization. Lebanon Valley Protective Association is a protective association which is a volunteer fire company which provides service for the town of Lebanon, but it's on a contract basis. Stephentown Fire District is a tax district authorized by the state of New York. It is a municipal tax district. and you receive taxes. Those of you that are receiving taxes, you can take a look at your tax bill and get your $30 to $35 per year that you're paying for fire taxes in the town of Stephentown. The fire district owns the current firehouse and all the apparatus. The fire company, which is Stephentown Volunteer Fire Department Incorporated, is a not-for-profit organization. It's a social organization, a business organization. It owns the fire hall on Grange Hall Road. The sole purpose of Stephentown Volunteer Fire Department is to provide the manpower for the fire district to fight fires and other emergency incidents. That's the difference. Not for profit, everything that, the fundraisers and everything goes to the fire department. Fire district raises taxes. This is the list of the original company members in 1939. So we're celebrating the actual volunteer fire department and fire district, which was formed, as I say, between 1924 and 1939. Nobody knows, or nobody would reveal through anything in records that I've been able to find as to what happened to the original fire company, nor to the 20 fire extinguishers that were dispersed. Although Tammy just said she may have one of the original fire extinguishers, stone acid fire extinguishers.
Be careful
Which
handling
if
it.
she does, the curator might be interested in getting it for the historical society. They say there weren't that many members from the original 24, the original 60 members that came out in 24 that came in 1939. This is our original truck that sits outside right now. In May, it was ordered. It was a Sanford pumper on a Chevrolet chassis, and it was delivered just prior to my birth in 1939, either in October or November 1939. This is sitting in front of the old fire station, which was behind the old firehouse. And if you'll take a look behind you, you'll see Vanderbilt House, which was our fire hall for many, many years. Unfortunately, due to the deterioration, it had to be torn down in 1997, I believe it was. This is the same truck, 1939, known as E45, engine 45, designated by the county, still as an in-service truck. This was in a parade in Berlin in 1941. In 1998, Bob Adler, please raise your hand. The labor of love restored this vehicle to what it is today. It was an extensive amount of restoration. We had some restoration on brakes and seals here a week or two ago. So, and it was this year that we replaced the rear tires on that truck that were original from 1939. We did not think that we wanted to use it for any purpose with cotton thread, cotton cord. The truck is used for parades and is also used for firefighter funerals currently. The original firehouse housing our 1939 Chevrolet was a building located behind Fred Brown. Anybody know where Fred Brown's house? Michael, do not tell me where that is. Anybody know where the original post office was? No, you're not allowed to say that from here. There's an attorney in that building right now. It was the Fred Brown Insurance Agency, and there was the building located behind it. It's the building directly across the street from the current post office, across from what used to be Sykes Stores, the white building on the corner of Brown Road and 43. That stood behind it. No heat. Truck stayed in there on a year-round basis until they purchased the building, which was located behind the Vanderbilt House. That's the Vanderbilt House just before it was torn down. You can see the remnants of it back there. And where the current firehouse is today is that red building that was torn down by, one of our members for a fee after the property was purchased by the fire district. Well, let me tell you, there were 4 trucks in there, front to back, and between the mirrors on either side were about 4 inches. It was hard getting in and out of those trucks. Construction of the new station occurred in 1978. It's an all metal building, 75 by 75. And unfortunately, the hall, the Vanderbilt House, as they say, deteriorated significantly in 1997, had to be torn down. They told us when we did, we're looking at renovations on that, they said that the cost of renovation would have been more than trying to rebuild it. So what we did, October 15th, 1978, we dedicated the new firehouse. Over 30 members of the department were in attendance at that time. We would love to have that number of firefighters today. We are really in dire straits as far as firefighters are concerned. We need more people, more younger people, more people. 1987, we put up the pavilion. It was a concrete block end with an open pavilion on, and we utilized that for our block dances for a number of years. And then eventually we decided that we were going to have a hall because it would tear down the building where meetings were held, and this is what it looked like in 2004. The enclosure happened between 1980 and 1991, I think it was. We only had it as an open pavilion for a few years. In 1989, we celebrated our 50th anniversary, and our president sent us a letter commending us for the 50 years of service. George W. Bush, Sr. I believe you have a letter. There were copies of that letter in the box that you showed her. So we're gonna blame it on you. Unfortunately, when the building was torn down in 1997, a lot of the old records, including minutes and records of fires and incidents in the town, went with it in the dumpster. How do we respond to calls? Started out that in the 1939, that era, they said that there were current telephones, and actually, with the party lines that they had, they went through the Lebanon operator. So, the original Taconic Telephone Company with an operator 24/7 down in Lebanon, and then the operator in turn would ring up any of the members on the party lines, ring, 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 and try and get them out. Back in the mid to late 50s, they started to change phones into dial telephones, and we had a red phone system. The telephone number was 733-5151. You might recognize that number because that's the number that we currently use for our fire station. We kept it out of service for a number of years, but the 5151 consisted of telephones, red phones, that were located in various officers' homes and sites of store. And when a call came in, you would wait for it to ring 3 times, pick up the phone and listen. And someone would say, my house is on fire, I had this sort of situation. And the people that were on the phone would then say, who's on the phone? And we would figure out who was on the phone and start going down a telephone tree. Each person had a telephone list that they called. We had, I think, 10 or 11 names that we would call, but we could turn out 35 or 40 people to a structure fire in the middle of the night. The good side about it, one time we had a call, Paul Sykes picked the phone up, was on the phone, and the woman said, "My house is on fire, click." And the Paul Sykes said, "That's crazy, Jim." And we all went to her house fire. The bad thing was that we never knew who was going to be answering the phone. And there were times when I was out, Paul was out, people weren't around, and our kids, under the same instructions, would pick up the phone after the third ring. Be the only one there, take the call, and start looking down the telephone list. The call was turn off firefighters.
It was 2 rings. It's 2 rings. The very strict instructions, 2 rings, do not answer before that.
Yeah. So, in 1985, we got pagers. And we still use pagers today as a primary response. And a telephone call, even back then, was the initial 911 system, went to our dispatch center in Troy, and they in turn would page us out, tell us what, when, where, why, and how. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, I can guarantee you raise about 6 inches off of your bed when that thing goes off. Those of us that have them on. Recently, we've gone to a secondary response item, which is, smartphones, to a app that's called I Am Responding. Whereas with a pager, we have a verbal, which is how it comes through many times, with no follow-up. The I Am Responding gives us a written indication of what the call is and where it's located, and then we'll respond. So that's the secondary. That's our primary communication, and that's the secondary. During the period of about 20 years, about 1953 to about 1973, maybe 74, this town and the surrounding towns were hit with serious arson calls. We were running anywhere from 25 to 30 structure fires a year. Stephentown, Berlin, Hancock, Lebanon, Tuscaloosa, Oaks Corners, all of those. And let me tell you, we learned how to fight fire. In 1973, Berkshire Regal contacted 2 of our members, Chief of the Department and myself, to do an interview. And I talked to Cy Close, who was chief at the time. Cy and I both agreed that, it would be good to get information out, but the thing that we said to the paper, both of us, was do not sensationalize what's happening in Stephentown. When this came out the following week, Stephentown, New York, town of fear. That was the first time that I learned how bad paper reporting could be. I'll tell you some other things. I can tell you some stories about others, but this is the worst one. Mike, that was 1973. Shortly after this, we had an automobile accident that occurred in front of the Esposito house, where a car hit a tree and killed one of the people. not the one you're thinking, not the ward boy, but another one. And 2 weeks or 3 weeks after that, his partner, who was in the accident but did not get injured too badly, died of a heroin overdose, and all of a sudden our fire stopped. So we have a pretty good idea that that's where things were going at the time. It was, my family was also a recipient of one of these arson fires in the fall of 1968. George Eckhart was coming home from a town board meeting, and he saw the match lit on the outside of my folks' house up on Gould Road. Went in and called the 5151 number. If he'd gone directly to the house, he might have seen who it was that set the fire. As it was, the house is pretty well going by the time the fire department got there. And as the story goes, Lou Sharp, who was a fire captain, was coming up West Street, came to the fire, got to the fire, and by radio we learned that the house that he had passed on the way to the fire was set on fire after he'd gone by. And strange things happening back then. These are some of the fires that we've had in the past. You can see that, we fight fires daytime, nighttime, fires at 0, at 90 degrees. This one right here was on Cranston Hill and was a cooking fire. They put chicken on deep fat frying, open pan, and forgot it was there. They were playing cards. They were probably doing some other things too, but this was a vehicle up on Losty Road. The Zimas drove their pickup. Old Matt Zima drove his pickup into the trees. We never were able to really get to it with a big apparatus. It was gone by the time we arrived anyway. And then an old barn fire. 1962, mutual aid at its best and worst, because this was the propane tanker that blew up in the town of Berlin. And the only time in Rensselaer County history that every single fire company in Rensselaer County was activated either as a backup or directly to the scene. There were a number of lives that were lost. There were many buildings that were burned and many buildings that were saved. The firewall went over buildings and hit the next building. One of the major buildings that we had was a very large camp building up on Moore Hill Road, and that's what was found when the call finally came in. Many of these buildings that were set on fire were set back in the woods someplace, and there were very delayed responses to them because either nobody was there or it wasn't seen for quite some time. Not too far from here, this is right up on Garfield Road. You'll see it going out toward 43. They totally rebuilt the house. Fire started in the garage and then spread to the house. The Eckhart barn fire. It's almost 2 years now since that fire. And what we see on the left there was probably about 10 minutes after we arrived. And then about 45 minutes later, you see the lower right-hand picture of what was left. That, for those of you who know where that barn was on South Stephentown Road, the barn was going south, was on the right-hand side, and their house is on the left-hand side. It's about 300 feet away, just about the length of a football field, maybe a little shorter. It blistered the siding on the house. That's how hot it was. Other things that we are involved in are flooding. Back in 1945, there was a major flood that wiped out every bridge from Hancock all the way to the Hudson River. In 1968, we had a flash downpour, 4 inches of rain in 30 minutes. Route 43 between 22 and the state line was being rebuilt at the time, and this house was occupied by Rachel Williams, who was a mail carrier at the time. Not mail carrier, excuse me, Berkshire Eagle carrier. It was her house, and she had a sub-level, living area. You step down from the grade level down into her living area and then step back up again into a bedroom. And the water was pouring in one side and going out the other. Most of you have been here. We received, in 2009, we received 10 inches of rain in 24 hours. I cannot imagine what would have happened to us if Helene and 30 inches of rain that hit Asheville, North Carolina here a week ago, what 30 inches of rain would have done to this town, because of the devastation that we incurred with just 10 inches in 24 hours. This was Route 22 down by Stewart's. The bridge was being rebuilt by the state, and we got one of the calls was you have tanks floating in the water as the bridge is collapsed, and they put a temporary bridge up. And we ended up closing that bridge, and every road into Stephentown was closed, with the exception of West Street down in 11. Was the only way in and out of town for about 24 hours. We received a lot of mutual aid there too. Weather emergencies continued for like the October 4th snowstorm in 1987. We had 9 inches to 13 inches down in the main street, Stephentown, and in the higher elevations, like the top of Stephentown Center Hill, 26 inches of snow. And 36 hours later, you couldn't tell it was any snow at all. And it was wet, soggy snow. Motor vehicle accidents continue to be one of the major things that we get involved with. This is the most recent, which was one of our town trucks that had a medical emergency and ran right into it, right in front of the fire station. It was over on Hancock Road. Very, very lucky to get on. This one happened way over the West Stephentown on Route 43. And a doctor who was on the scene said that the driver was dead. And I had one of my EMTs come in, Jeff Woodrow, Jeff's not here. But so one of my EMTs went in, found a pulse, and we had, that's very nice ladies who had been returning from shopping on the S turn, the notorious S turn over on West Stephentown, above the West Stephentown Baptist Church. Came around the corner a little bit too fast and hit that pole, and you'll notice that there's a branch right there. It's about a 3-inch branch. That's the only thing holding that car up. So we extricated them out the side here. They were uninjured. All the packages, you'll notice, they had to hold back in the package, but they were okay. Tammy, you had this picture in the shop down there, didn't you? Jaws of Life. Thank you to Stephentown Historical Society. We had a bicentennial. And the surplus monies that were raised during the bicentennial were donated to the Stephentown Volunteer Fire Department to provide us with a Jaws of Life. So we put that into service only after about 6 months of having it. And the story was that it was sitting in the station in a box. Hadn't been put into service yet. We had the young gentleman, teenager, decided he was going to knock a pole down directly in front of the firehouse. And two of us, Henry's wife and myself, were the first two to arrive at the station. I was taking care of the kid that was in the car, and Henry took it out of the box, and hooked it up, and we extricated the young gentleman and had him transported to the hospital. We do training on a regular basis. Every Tuesday night is training, with the exception of the second Tuesday of the month is our meeting night. And the first and the third are fire training, and the fourth Tuesday is for EMS training. Here has changed over the year as well. When I first joined the fire department, we had canvas coats, boots that folded down and then came up to your hip, rubber boots and all that. They did have steel toes. We used orange glow gloves that were plastic coated cotton, helmets, sometimes with a face shield, some not. When I joined the fire department, we did not have anything called a self-contained breathing apparatus or a CBA. Today, to outfit a firefighter is slightly over $5,000. And with all the gear on, it's about 35 pounds. Self-contained breathing apparatus, this is the self-contained breathing apparatus that allows us to go 30 minutes inside of a fire when the air is no good. Considering that things have changed over the years and the carcinogens and the deadly gases that are off-gassed from fires that produce phosgene and chlorine and many of the others that can kill a firefighter, it's mandatory that we have self-contained breathing apparatus. In 2019, Herr Adler, who was our grant writer extraordinaire, got us a $52,300 grant, and we have a Bauer compressor that we can fill our own tanks with. Prior to that, we had to go all the way to Huset, sometimes to Lebanon, where they had one, but most often than not, we ran into a lot of difficulty in trying to get air bottles filled. So now we can fill our own bottles. As a matter of fact, we have Hancock coming over to fill their bottles with us now. Things that we did that were a lot of fun, but were very beneficial were musters. They were brought about to try and get younger firefighters attuned to working with fire equipment and hopefully bring them along to be interior firefighters along the way. And it worked out quite well for a number of years. Parades, we used to do the muster parade. We would probably have 1,000 people along the parade. We started on the other side of 22 on 43 by the cemetery and go all the way to the muster field. We continue to do fire prevention. We do it twice a year. Fire Prevention Week is actually this week, ended today. And then we do a summer safety program and work with the youth commission, with the library, going back to the youth commission as of this coming year, right? Which I'm sure the library is going to be involved in anyway. We have a lot of fun with that, and kids have a blast. The two dinners that we do on an annual basis, the corned beef dinner in the spring, and currently we're doing the roast beef dinner in the fall. At one time, we served 1,000 people in a roast beef dinner. And many churches and fire departments in Rensselaer and Columbia County learned about how successful we were. And over a period of years, they just pulled people away from ours. So we're serving about 330 or 340 people now versus what it was years ago. Of course, we could also blame it on the fact that GE closed down because we used to sell good many tickets over at General Electric. Some of our old apparatus. That truck and that truck were both converted oil tankers from Leggenbauer Oil. That's what we used for tankers. This was a 800-gallon tanker, this was a 1,000-gallon tanker. And in 1958, we purchased this truck. And that truck still sits down, it's wax. When it was taken out of service, it was put down as wax, and nothing's ever happened since. That's a Chevrolet. Unique truck. We thought it was a standard truck that we had purchased, but we had a problem after a fire in 11 where we had a couple of push rods because we were pushing the truck far beyond its capability when the building factory went up. And we found out that it was the engine that the Chevrolet had put in that was a 358 stationary marine engine. Odd to get parts, but it was a great truck. Continued right on through. Our next truck, and by the way, that truck was the only new truck we bought from 1939 to 1958. 1973, we purchased that truck. It was an International, and it had a front mount pump. Had to cover that in the winter, otherwise it would freeze on the way to a call. I had that a number of times. But subsequent to the replacement, the old trucks that we have now, these two trucks well out of service. This one you may still see around town because the Goodmo Construction purchased that at auction or at bid after we put it out of service, and they still use it on occasion. From 1958 to 1987, yes, Mike. The what? Yes, it was. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a rental for trucks.
So 1987, we purchased a Mack truck, 350 horsepower Mack engine and diesel engine, and the first truck that was automatic. And that truck carries 1,250 gallons of water. The next truck that we purchased was in 1993, 1,000 gallon, and the first time that we played with what's called compressed air foam or CAFs. And that allows us to fight fire with a heck of a lot more firefighting capability with a lot less water. It's like 7 to 1. Instead of carrying 7,000 gallons of water, we can fight fire with like it was 7,000 gallons. And it's easier on the firefighters because you're using a mixture of air, water, and foam. And it's not the foam you hear about, the cancer-producing AFFF foam that's killing firefighters. That's stuff from way back in the 90s, 80s, and 90s. This is nothing more than a mixture of soap, expensive soap. 2006, we put our next truck up, also 1,000 gallons, also a CAF truck. And then in 2016, our most recent acquisition, which was a Ford F-550, which carries 300 gallons, but it's a dual truck. It carries rescue equipment, first aid equipment, extrication equipment, firefighting, and has the same capabilities, although not the same amount of water, but has the same capabilities as the big trucks. And probably 20 years ago now, we purchased at surplus, a government surplus, truck, pickup truck from the Army and converted it, or I should say, we converted it, this WAC, or Incorporated converted for us, and it's our brush truck and continues to be in service on a year-round basis. This year we purchased a new chief's vehicle. Long story. 1978, we got into EMS, something I had been trying to get the department to do for a while. Took a very unfortunate situation in order for us to go on this route. One of our fire commissioners had recently come back from the hospital with surgery and went into full arrest. His wife was a nurse. Called the 733-5151. We responded. We did CPR. We waited for about a half an hour for the ambulance, and we did another half hour, 45 minutes of CPR on the way to the hospital. In the hospital, and unfortunately, he did not make it. But the following day, the commissioners and the chief came to me and asked me, what will it take to get an EMS into, or first aid or rescue into this department? And that's when we started, and 6 of us took the EMT course and put us all into service in 1978. We didn't have an ambulance, so we relied on the closest ambulance, which was Lebanon Valley. At the time, they had 2 ambulances, and they provided the ambulance, they provided EMTs, and it was good. We used our rescue truck, responded to a call, turned the patient over to their ambulance, and off they went. In the mid-80s, that changed around to the point where they were losing EMTs to not have enough staff to cover their own. So they would send their second ambulance up here with a driver, and we would provide the EMTs, 1 or 2 EMTs. Then in 1993, with the things that were going on down there, they decided that they were going to be going out of business, and they were going to contract the services to somebody else. And so we purchased their ambulance, which was the 1990, I forgot now what the year, but we started our ambulance service by purchasing a used ambulance in Lebanon Valley, and now Stephentown Volunteer Fire Department, Stephentown Fire District, we're providing ambulance services for the town of Stephentown. And we continue to do so today. This is our current ambulance, 2008, with 107,000 miles on, 117,000 miles on, about. And we have new ambulance on order. This is what the inspiration is for the paint job that we're looking forward to. Delivery is to be sometime 2025. we keep hearing date changes. Hopefully sometime in the first and second quarter of 2025. At a cost. This is not a new ambulance entirely. This is a older box being put on a new chassis. But the cost to us is $235,000. And think about those new trucks that we were going through. Each of those trucks today, big trucks, probably $600,000 to $700,000 each. Our fire budget is $154,000 a year. We have not raised the fire budget in the last 15 years, nor is it going to change this year. So, taxpayers in Stephentown are doing quite well as far as the cost of emergency services on a 365-day, 7-day a week, 24 hours a day, all by volunteers. But we do need help. During the past 85 years, we've had 17 chiefs. Current Chief David Corlew, Assistant Chief Cyril Grant. Officers are elected on an annual basis. And this is the swearing in of officers that occurred in January of 2024. Just a little bit of fire safety, since this is the end of Fire Prevention Week. Smoke detectors save lives. Carbon monoxide detectors, they're also extremely beneficial for saving lives. Change of batteries. Many of the smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors have 10-year batteries in them, or 5-year batteries. But check, if you have those long life batteries, at least check your smoke detectors and CO detectors that they're working. Make sure that they're working now. This call 911 is very important. We've had several instances this year where people either called me or the chief before calling 911. All that does is delay the response. So please, call 911 if you have an emergency. If it's something that's minor, we can turn it over. Rather come and have something that's minor than to have something that turns out to be too much too late. So please, if you have an emergency, call 911. If you have a fire, get out and stay out. And the last thing is street numbers. I go over this again and again and again. Usually, when there's a fire, there's fleeing smoke, you can see it. We can find it. At 2 o'clock in the morning, and it's an EMS call, we may not be able to find it. We had a call the other day that was out on 43, going down West Stephentown toward the West Stephentown Baptist Church. It was during the day. Every single mailbox that had a house number on it, you could only see if you were coming from Albany to Stephentown. There were no numbers on for the fire department to see going out. So numbers need to be visible in both directions. Bob Adler is working right now with the town board of Stephentown that we are going to try and get at least 300 number visible fluorescent type numbers out on houses for people that want them. So please, Bill. We use GPS, but quite frankly, there are occasions when GPS does not properly identify the location. We've had incidents where you hit the button for what the GPS is and it turns to says Cincinnati, Ohio. So, yeah.
See a street number. Turn here.
We provide maps to all our new drivers so that they have an idea and make strong suggestions that they spend days going out and driving various roads in Stephentown.
Recalculating.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
Stevie was the first mechanized firefighter to ever enter this valley area. The year was 1934, and there was nothing in Canaan, Lebanon, Stephentown, or in Petersburg. All of these places have the best in fighting equipment today, but back then the little red Dodge had to do it all. Speedy dashed from town to town and from fire to fire with boundless energy, fearlessly tackled anything large or small. Most anything it tackled. The alarm sounded one night when it was colder than heck, according to Walter Wynn, the man behind the wheel. The red streak took off, going south, really caring that it didn't know where it was going. It was sheer joy for Speedy to race its wheels. It was built for the greatest speed
and speed it did, all the way through center Berlin and Cherry Plain. Coming over the hill, the black sky became red, and the heart of the speeding red engine raced faster and faster. He was excited now that the enemy had been seen and wished for immediate battle. The driver was excited too. While he sat nearly frozen in the open seat, he could see that this would be a hot night because Bateman's garage, located where McClintock's was to do business later, was going fast. The Red Wagon put up a good fight that night, and who knows, a whole business center could today owe its life to this fight.
And guess what? Another fire company entered into the mutual aid of the Bateman Garage. But yeah, because that's what it was.
Anyway, at that point, this was written in 1991, Speedy was sitting in Berlin's house. But I also have original minutes from the first meeting of Stephentown Fire Department and the fourth meeting in 1939, because Mel's father was, Bill Feathers, was assistant chief the first few months and then chief. So you can copy those if you want.
I believe this is the November, okay, we don't have the November, we have the October one. Yes, I would like very much to do that. I have June, I have May, June, and October. And we get this back to you. Bob, you can tell us about speed.
Well, I worked on Speedy 2 or 3 years ago, and got him back on the road. And the members at Berlin said Speedy was named derisively because he was so slow. As far as fire district business goes, Rick mentioned apparatus cost has doubled or tripled in the past few decades. The cost of ambulances way up. Your fire taxes is about $35 a year, and it hasn't changed in 15 years. How is all that compatible in 2024 to 2025? We're falling behind.
We are falling behind. Fortunately, one aspect is that the ambulance is now billing. That was changed over the first of this year for Stephentown. It was a mandate by the state of New York after changing the law a year ago in June. Prior to that time, no fire company that was not a city, any volunteer fire company, was not allowed by law to bill if they had ambulance service. Now we're mandated, if we don't bill, which is becoming, Celia, it's a real, technical. We have an outside company that does the billing for us. It's still technical, but if we didn't bill, any ALS agency that was responding to assist us could bill us directly, and we would have to pay them. So this way they get their money, we get ours, and it offsets the ambulance. We probably are looking at a piece of new apparatus in 4 to 5 years. So we're saving slowly. Hopefully things will stay apropos. Any other questions? Tom? Yes. So Don is asking about fire blankets that are being advertised on the internet and on. As a matter of fact, I had purchased 4 of them, 5 of them. We gave 4 of them to our kids. So yeah, that's a very good thing. It's a very quick, efficient way of putting out a small grease fire, small fire smoker. I suppose they could. Be trying to do it for a fundraiser or something. Anybody else?